Hey guys, how's it going? Today I want to talk about Rolex and more specifically vintage Rolex. As you can see from my Rolex collection, they are all sapphire modern pieces. Um, simply because I feel that they are very good value for money, unlike they're beautiful. They're Rolexes, right? But let's talk a little bit about vintage Rolex. Anybody who's a Rolex collector know the prices of these vintage Rolexes, and are they worth it? Right? Are they worth it? I don't know. I've seen and held a couple of 5512s. I've seen some 1675 GMTs. I've seen the Steve McQueen Explorer, Explorer 2. Never had the privilege to see a vintage Daytona, but I've seen a vintage Sub GMT, an Explorer 2, and beautiful watches, right? Beautiful watches. I guess I can see the charm in it. The patina, yeah, it's okay. It's great, right? The aging and I guess the personality of the watch. But is it worth, you know? Let's take the sub for example. Right, I have here 14060M, right, and I'd say it's the closest incarnation to the 5513, and I would say it's a better watch objectively, right? It's technologically, right? Rolex have made improvements, and the crystal, the case, the movement, functions just the same way, right? Not to take anything away from the 5513. It's a gorgeous watch, but objectively speaking, right? Let's take away supply and demand. The modern Rolexes are better made, right? I don't think anyone can dispute that. But because of supply and demand, and really just because of supply and demand, the vintage subs, the vintage Rolexes command a huge premium, and I feel it's a little bit overvalued. So why do I stay away from vintage? Well, firstly because of the price, and also, well, mainly because they're just you got to be so careful with vintage. Right? These watches are old, they've been messed around with. You got to make sure that the dial is original. You got to make sure that everything is correct. Right? The case, the movement, and you just become so anal. Going into vintage Rolexes will make you have to be an extremely anal person. I guess you have to be a really anal. I don't know if does it make you anal, or maybe you're an anal person to begin with, and therefore you can go into vintage Rolex. For me, I just don't have it in me. I love the modern Rolexes. I know a lot of people say that, hey, all the white gold surrounds around the lume markers kind of looks tacky and there's too much bling and all that. But come on, right? These are expensive watches. Back then they were just tool watches, so they were pretty affordable. But right now, today you're looking at how much are you looking to spend on the Daytona, right? $12,000 US. Back then the 116520 was probably about at least 8,000-9,000 US. It has to look the part, right? It has to look like an $8,000-9,000 US watch. So they have to make it look a little bit more luxurious, and so it's kind of ironic, right? So in terms of material, it costs more to make the modern subs, but just because of the simple law of supply and demand, right? The vintage Rolexes are kind of just beyond reach and beyond understanding and comprehension. Yeah, that's just how I feel towards the vintage Rolexes. They're great, they're beautiful, but they're just too expensive, and it's not in my opinion, it's not worth it. That's just how I feel. At that price range, right, for a 5513, I'd say you're looking at least 7,000-8,000. That's kind of hard too, right? Would you pick that over the modern sub? I'm not a fan of the modern sub, to be honest. Maybe I'm just being hypocritical now. but then I just feel that the modern subs, the super case and the maxi dial can be a little bit overwhelming, right? I think that the modern Rolexes, the case is just a little bit too bloated. The sapphire, aluminum bezel Rolexes, in my opinion, is, I guess you can call them transitional, right? These are now considered transitional Rolexes, and I think they're the best because they maintain the sleekness of the vintage Rolexes, right? The tapering, the smoothness, the elegance, while also possessing modern, right, more updated technologies. And I'm pretty sure in the future, right, these Rolexes I have before you are just gonna go up, right, in value. Probably it will never be as expensive as the vintage Rolexes, but I'm just they are fantastic, right? And they are, I think, a little bit more usable. I would easily go swimming in any of these watches. Would I go swimming with a vintage sub? Right? Would you go swimming with a vintage 5513? Right? Would you risk it? Would you risk banging it around? Especially, right? So they're no longer, they've reached a point where they're too expensive to be used for what it was made for, which is a bit of a shame. So yeah, anyway, let me know what you think. I'm probably gonna get a lot of heat for this one, but that's just my humble opinion after owning these Rolexes. Anyway, please comment, like, subscribe, whatever, you know what to do. Thanks.